wonder about both of these teams as well is, do we see Saints ever handshake into that Rhine composition? Because one of the things I've talked about with Ice, who is their coach and their manager, Ice said that when they played Redbirds, when they played that matchup, they had the complete blueprint on how to beat that rush style of composition. So that's something that, again, I wonder on Antarctic Peninsula specifically, do we see that? Because this is a map that a lot of teams have just opted in to handshake that Rhine 1v1 composition with the Mei and the Bastion because of it's so enclosed, because you have that 3-2-1. As we go into this, though, make sure to get your chat predictions in there. 1 for Saints, 2 for Trick Room, getting into Antarctic Peninsula. And again, it's about, are we going to see that matchup? Is Saints going to be forced to end up playing into this Reinhardt composition? That's really going to be the important part about this, because Saints, with their roster so far and how coordinated they are and how good they are, this is a team that can run circles around the Rhine Rush composition. And I would expect them to have that capability, even as good as Trick Room is at running this composition.
And I think that's exciting for not only you and I, but those watching at home to see if it can be broken. It's like the Superman Batman moment of, like, do you bleed? And will they give into it as they approach to this initial point for this first round?
And I think one of the things about what you're going to be seeing Saints do here is play a little bit of that keep away, right? You have that poking a little bit with King on the flanks, with Tree as well from a distance, and they just want to stay away from that 3-2-1 potential of the Trick Room composition, right? Because if you ever get caught by a Mei wall or anything like that, it could spell certain doom. Luckily, Saints do have some escape potential, so it's just about finding that sectioning off and poking down before you can get those cooldowns in.
Trick Room able to gain positional advantage until Mikey leaves with the charge, entering in onto the high ground. Disruptor shot zones them out quite well, though, to give some space, and Boat actually gains this first initial pick onto King, and there is a hyper focus with Pummy to force out the supports.
And this is one of the things we actually talked to with Rocket about Tracer in this map in particular, is that just it's so enclosed that it's really difficult to maneuver the Tracer. King is a very gifted Tracer player in their own right, but still, it's so hard in enclosed areas like this to deal with, like a Mei Icicle just randomly hitting you, a Reinhardt swing, a Bastion grenade. Those things are so hard to deal around. So Saints, again, because of this composition, are going to have to play a little bit more slowly and carefully to deal with what Trick Room have, because Trick Room now have the amplification matrix from Hanbei relatively soon, so it's going to be even harder for Saints to make that engagement into Trick Room's comp.
And they're going to want to lean with Saints diving in onto it, because if they get that positioning with the amplification matrix, Mikey's on their trajectory in. That's free damage with Pummy and this Century ability on the Bastion. Still holding strong. Already almost 50% gain here from Trick Room, because Saints is looking for the methodical play, but they're going to commit it. They get the pickup onto Tree in the back, and there's nothing that they can do about it.
This is really well methodically played as well from Trick Room. I think that the way that they're moving around is actually Saints are committing Kitsune Rush into this. They want to try and buy back in best they can. They are coming up on some key ultimates to do so.
Vega eliminates Hanbei in the back, so they no longer have that extremely throughput healing necessary. The sound barrier comes in from Magic Mayfall to make sure they can at least keep this team flourishing for the moment, but Tree has been entered back into the mix. They've entered the chat. They're here to deal some damage from that rotating center pillar. The Blizzard gonna lock down Mikey and falls to the artillery shells from on high.
I mean, Mikey is down, but Saints are still trying to fight this one out. Pummy is alive, and the healing needs to be there to keep them like this. Mayfall has gone down, so it's just Hanbei right now trying to keep Pummy alive throughout all of this, and there's just, unfortunately, not enough healing throughput with all the incoming damage from Saints. And Saints, you can see, I think Mikey is swapped over to the Hammond here just to try and get back to the point, because they were in danger of losing that one. Might just go back and switch to the Winston. I love this decision if they are going to do that, but they kind of think that they see on the outside Trick Room's going to come back in, so I kind of need to stay on this right now, but they still have the ultimates to work with here. They have a sound barrier, a pulse bomb, and an overclock, so they have the ability to really brute force their way into a fight win against Trick Room.
With Pummy opting for this adjustment to see if they can get the same type of value. They're so slightly maneuvering behind the shield. Ball comes out to deviate. What a coordinated play for two. There's an Earth Shatter in retaliation, though. Tree is still alive. The overclock is just finally reaching its end. Boat gets chipped away for that last small margin of health, and now Infected going for the swing. We can't quite hit the ball out of the court on Tree.
Oh, they're staggering him too. So smart. Just milking as much percentage as they possibly can out of this one player so that they can continue to tick up that percentage themselves. And Trick Room, I mean, it's a scary position for them. They put Pummy onto that Cassidy just to deal a little bit more front-loaded damage onto Mikey, but they're not that close to a lot of their key ultimates, right? They had to use that Shatter, and because Saints are playing these fights fast and loose, Trick Room are not getting that time to set up and get these, combinations with the wall to get that 3-2-1 and kill those members that they need to.
And CJ has this Kitsune Rush, so it can really guarantee another fight win. You have to rely on some slowed momentum or denial, or the retreat here. Kitsune Rush, there's a wall to buy some space, and instantly Trick Room is out. The Immortality Field has been removed, but no one else is really in the sight lines.
Oh, but Trick Room wants to come back in. Mateball goes down, though.
No.
High noon from Pummy finds King in the back line.
Does make it an even score. It is 4 versus 4, but solely relying on Hanbei to keep this team topped up. A very aggressive play, as we've seen from Tree before, getting capitalized on and removing them from this equation. Percentage still climbing, though. Saints just 3 away. There needs to be a rotation back to this for Trick Room to contest it, and they swap it back.
I mean, Saints are going to be able to get back onto this point and potentially cap, but look at the aggression from Trick Room. They want to be able to get these kills. Vega is going to go down, so that's a Lucio not here. You don't have that speed, and it's just going to be on King and Mikey to be able to proc this overtime right now, but they're walking into a Blizzard and a Shatter.
And they're going to have Sound Barrier as well to get extra assistance if they need it. Shatter right onto Mikey, goes for the pin, eliminates them from the equation. The Blizzard blocking the point of entry. That high ground position is the only way that you can attempt to jump down from to keep it contested and rotate around with King on this Tracer, making sure that that overtime continues to proc and just allows them to stay surviving on this position. But now Infected rises to the top, knocks Vega out in the open, can't continue to climb around that inner pillar to use the wall ride, and this is just desperate plays for Saints, and they can't stick to the point.
And I mean, if you're wondering why we're seeing this composition on Antarctic Peninsula more so than anything else, this is why. It's so hard to play that other composition into this. It's not even King's fault necessarily how much they've struggled on that map, because again, it's so hard to play the Tracer in an enclosed area like that, and there's so many things that can just randomly one-shot you. It's so difficult in that scenario. As you can look at the chat predictions, much closer actually than I would have expected. 52
I
to 48
agree.
is relatively close, and I think that's one of the cool things about this tournament is that we have a team like Trick Room, who I think a lot of us going into this would not have expected to go this far, and now they're getting voted toe-to-toe in the chat predictions with Saints because of how well they've played this composition. The 3-2-1 style that they're playing works so well, and you can see Saints sticking to the same type of composition. King is going to go on to the Reaper, which I think is a good decision. Gives you a little bit more of that front-loaded damage, but also security. You're not 150 health, and you can play a little bit safer here against what Trick Room is running to the table.
King gets a nice reposition with the rest of the team, allowing Trick Room to gain initial positioning towards the objective, but wait for it to become more feasible for a point of entry with this dive onto the backside, and Trick Room's still going to play extremely cautious and let this point become open for them.
I think they're just trying to poke around, see if Tree can get charged up towards that railgun and find something through the shield of Infected perhaps before they go and they aggress, but it's Trick Room who have control at this point first. Saints have to play this so methodically in their rotations, but the counter rotations are just as good from Trick Room.
Yeah, they're doing a fantastic job with the positioning. The Maywall blocks that opening between the double pillars and still only focus on that right-hand side. Round the corner, though, quite a bit of shots onto Pummy. Immortality Field has been expended. Bahambe gets the assistance, taking down King. Tree takes the high ground angle and gets one, denying a lot of that influx of damage, with Mikey guaranteeing that with the support down, that's it for Trick Room.
And the rotation was really good from Saints, you know, just playing it softly, knowing that we kind of can just give up this 25%, and we know that eventually someone like Tree is going to be able to pay off with a big kill, which they do get onto both the rotation, just a little bit slow from Trick Room there. And Tree has already gotten towards overclock right now. Comboed along with the Kitsune Rush, it's going to be very hard for Trick Room to get into this fight unless they brute force their way in with something like that amplification matrix.
And there was a little bit of a hesitancy going towards that main doorway. Takes the coastal portion around the boat up front. You do see Mortality Field expended. Firestrike gets a decent amount of damage, but with boat eliminated, Tree can finding another with the rail shot, and that stifles Trick Room's attempt.
And that's just good understanding of like when to go first as a composition, right? You know you have somewhat of an advantage here with Kitsune Rush, and because Trick Room likes to play in such a clumped up area, you get so much value from just the cleave of the Winston, the spam damage from all the rest of the heroes on Saints composition, and now they can continue to hold this ground effectively. And Trick Room, they're going to have to be the ones to make their ultimates go first and force out some of the cooldowns from Saints in these scenarios.
And King's still keeping an eye on that corner where they moved in originally, having full knowledge that it is the group moving together. Nice wall to divide, but can round the outer side. Goes for the pulse bomb. Doesn't quite get the value. Immortality Field has to be expended, which is much more in the grand scale of things to get rid of. Eludes the shatter that comes in from Infected and is just running circles around Trick Room as they are left very vulnerable in these last 20%, mind you.
Oh, and I mean, they're actually committed. Trick Room wants to try and win this one. The freeze comes in, and actually Pummy off the back end with enough damage from the High Noon is able to get 2, so Trick Room buy back into a desperate fight, and they are very lucky that they won that one, because if they lose, there's almost no way back. It's at 86%, and they don't have anything in a semblance of an ultimate economy, so it's a very expensive fight win for them, because Saints are going to come back in. They have an overclock to work with, and they can take a lot of space away from Trick Room, because you have to respect Tree and the overclock damage that's going to potentially come from them, especially now that wall is out.
Yeah, and there's a looming threat as well from King with how lightning fast they're getting this pulse bomb, but there's an instant shutdown again onto Boat. Numbers advantage, there is no more immortality field either. They are left defenseless underneath, except for basically the Reinhardt shield from Infected. Mikey shuts down the support. They've got no utility to maneuver back as easily as they have. 5% to go. They must get onto this. That's that pulse bomb I had mentioned, how lightning fast they can get it back into it. They have been bent, but they have not been broken to change this composition, and that will be Saints able to take this into a round 3.
And I think it's just perfect understanding of those rotations, right? Just playing keep away from the Trick Room composition. Even in that last fight where you saw, Trick Room, I think, did the smart thing. They're trying to go after the Sojourn, trying to take that pick down. But, I mean, if you're Boat there, you just get railed by the Sojourn, and there's almost no way back. I don't even blame them for not being able to hit their ice block button to keep them alive because of the burst damage that we saw there. So, again, Saints, when they can get around this composition and have, like, a little bit more open room on this type of map, not necessarily the other point that we saw of Antarctic Peninsula, they're just playing ring around the rosy, it feels like.
Yeah, and again, like I had mentioned, there's that only really subtle change onto the Wrecking Ball with this round 1 that they didn't win, but they went back to still what they felt confident with. That map with how the channeling went with doorways and caverns, especially around that front deck, it made it much more optimal for them as now we enter into this 3rd round to see who takes this first map.
Trick Room going back over to the Bastion composition. So again, it's about Saints and finding a way to avoid a lot of this incoming damage. The good thing about Trick Room is that with this composition, they do have a little bit more poke with that, with the Mei in this composition, with the Bastion in this composition. Tree can't just free farm in that area. They are going to continuously try and spam Tree out, and that might be an angle where Saints can take aggressiveness with Mikey.
They've got this high ground. Saints looking to just really crouch and elude the damage until they need to go down to commit. The dive begins with Mikey. Boat barely alive, a sliver of health. They remove the immortality field, so the defenses are dwindling as Tree waits for that opportunity to get the execution, and the rest fall in suit.
It's like a tiger, stalking its prey almost.
Yeah.
Like, a lot of this just feels like they are just perfectly in sync on when they want to dive, and just the ability to make those soft dives to take space, right? There, that was just Mikey doing one singular dive. There was so much cleave that Hanbei had to use Immortality Field early. Boat also had to use that Ice Block, so that means that Tree and King have free fire into that backline because the defensives are gone. It's just really good understanding of how to beat this composition of Trick Room and make their life a little bit more difficult than just saying 3, 2, 1, go.
Once again attempting to try and take this high ground away. Saints able to give the space. You basically have Tree in the back just looking to break the wall and still get some decent sight lines onto it because Trick Room have to force to the low ground. There is a lot of swiveling of the shield, so Infected needs to be careful in how they mitigate the damage, but since they're playing back towards this rear position, they've found a little bit of room to stabilize, but unfortunately King is still harassing. Pummy making sure to shut it down, not allowing it to gain any more pickups onto the support line, so it's Magic Mayfall with a sound barrier to give that extra necessary assistance to withstand the pounce.
Oh, and the point is flipped over. At this point, I think Saints need to, or they're going to opt back into this. They do get the Shatter out from Infected, which is a big cooldown in a fight that was pretty much already won, because against this composition that Saints is running, Shatter's pretty much guaranteed a lot of the time, just on a singular member, no matter what. So that's one that definitely Saints is going to be taking back to the toolshed, definitely happy with. But now it becomes a little bit more difficult for Saints in this scenario, because you're walking into a Blizzard, you're walking into as well an Ant Matrix. We know how good that is, not just with the Bastion, but just the rest of the comp in general, with Fire Strikes too. So Saints have to play carefully around when this cooldown comes out.
I'm loving this Deadeye to lead in, just to again zone them back, see how they're going to maneuver into this. They've used the wall, though, already to deny entryway to that left side, respecting the distance and playing very far back so that they cannot be easily delved onto. The Matrix does come out, but they've bypassed it. There's not enough influx of damage onto the dive to be able to cleanly mitigate it. There is at least some counteraction with the Blizzard and Infected getting a swing onto Tree, but this is still Saints regardless.
And you can see just the amount of respect that Trick Room had to give there. Trick Room gave up so much space just off the threat of the fact that Saints was moving forward and being aggressive, taking that high ground away from Trick Room. And one of the things that Trick Room has to do is they have to kind of plant their flag somewhere. It's either on that high ground or on the low ground. And if you're just giving up low ground for free, Saints definitely want to come at you from high ground. And Trick Room used a lot in that fight, and they don't have any semblance of an ultimate economy. So Saints is definitely in a great position.
Stick used as a desperate throw before having to force the recall down below. Doesn't have the defensive necessary, so they need to find the health pack, get back into this, top themselves back up, and look for re-entry. There is the Kiriko Kitsune rush, managing to force them off this catwalk and allow them to drop below, but they have to be cognizant of how fast this is swapping.
I mean, it's going to swap in. Oh, Tree actually gets taken down by Pummy. That's a huge pick. It takes down the overclock.
And you can see the damage still continues to be pressed onto this front line. Mikey can't stay up much longer, and this is swapped over, denying Saints from being able to get out of that cleanly.
Really, really clutch pick from Pummy there. I mean, taking down the overclock, we know how lethal Tree is with those. Just taking that out of the equation definitely wins them that fight. And now Trick Room has built up to their own ultimate economy of having a pretty decent one. They're going to have 4 ults here, and Saints, realistically, it's going to be on Mikey and King to be able to miracle their way into a fight, but it's going to be so hard to walk in against what Trick Room has.
Yeah, Mikey jumps instantly underneath to gain that coverage down below. Once again to reset with the high ground advancement. Shield active. Pummy isn't going to find anybody. They've got the time to do so. The shot doesn't gain value. Now, with this sound barrier, Magic 8-Ball gives the chance for retaliation, but Saints are just going to leave.
I mean, they have to. They don't have Mikey. It was a beautiful shatter from Infected just to take down Mikey, but there's a nice pulse. Good immortality field to keep themselves alive.
Yeah, Trick Room still in a position they need to get to there to touch. They managed to keep it into the overtime, but it's desperate bodies being thrown onto this point. Trick Room has been able to outplay this worthy attempt by Saints residing on their same composition. You talked about how it was like an animal prowling through to look for that pouncing moment, but unfortunately they continued to have watchful eyes on the brush.
And Trick Room continues to just have these moments where they're creating upsets. I mean, the bracket that they've gone so far has been relatively difficult when you looked at the start of this season, right? They beat, Cryx 3-0, they beat Timeless 3-0, they beat Hive yesterday, and now they've taken a game off of Saints. Like, this team was not a team a lot of people were expecting, and is definitely an upset team that is like an underdog that a lot of people, I think, now are going to have a lot more eyes on, especially taking a game off of Saints like this at the start. The way that they were played, impeccable. I think I want to call Infected the master of the solo shatter, because a lot of the time, Infected is hitting these solo shatters on very key members. Even that last fight where you saw
this one here,
it was not even this one, but it was off screen while the High Noon was going off. Infected just shatters Mikey solo, and they insta-kill Mikey, who had Primal, and that means that Saints is already at a deficit. Like, the way Trick Room understands the ins and outs of these compositions, and those tiny moments where they can get a little bit of an advantage, makes them so lethal in this composition.
Yeah, and even though we didn't get to see it, agreed, like, there was that one, in fact, the other one with the Wrecking Ball, there was another one as well when they came to close proximity, because they know the pressure point. They know how to be able to counteract this, despite how well, realistically, Saints were still able to play this, despite it not being what we consistently saw with the Reinhardt, the Bastion, the Cassidy. They've stuck to their guns, but with us talking specifically now about Saints and how they were still able to put up an extremely competitive fight on multiple occasions with the comp they have, now we deviate away from Antarctic Peninsula, and that's going to be
King's Row. I mean, it's going to be King's Row.
That's what I mean.
What did Dor call it? What did Dor call it? The Antarctic Peninsula, King's Row, just hellhole, just like that we've had.
It's like continuously
throughout.
That's all it is.
That's all we've seen from them. But I think you're right. Like, King's Row is a map that we do see like a lot of variance on, and still for me the question becomes like, do we see the same thing from Saints? Because it feels Saints have already guaranteed themselves, and so have Trick Room guaranteed themselves into the Pro-Am. So, getting some practice against this. I like that I didn't see kind of Saints handshake. I think this is like their best composition, and practicing, they're going to need practice against something like this composition, right? That's the biggest thing for me. So like them going over to the Reinhardt composition is something that I think is playing into the hands of what Trick Room would want, and that is not what I expect from Saints ever, right? Saints they want to play their game, and they want to play it well. Just on that map in particular with Antarctic Peninsula, it's so difficult to pilot that composition, and these are very good players, right? Like, King is a really good player, but like sometimes a random icicle just hits you and you just lose. Like, it's unfortunate in those enclosed areas.
Yeah, and again, looking at the bigger picture, they've guaranteed the spot, as we talk about, for the teams that we've got playing. So now they can look to just continue refining what they know they're going to need, the necessary tools for them. And when they're going against a comp like that, yes, this is a map that was going in favor of Trick Room. Oh, are we going to take a gander somewhere else? I believe we are. We're free of the hole at which that we were discussing earlier, and we enter onto Blizzard World. I'm so ready to go on a roller coaster and have you not look at the water by the shark.
Oh yeah, that's right. I looked it up. It was thalassophobia. I don't know how to pronounce it, but it was something thalassophobia, where it's like, I saw this one TikTok where it's just this guy like looking at the bottom of the ocean and then a statue comes out. That's my biggest fear, right? Like I that is the worst thing for me. But as we go to Blizzard World, I think this makes sense, obviously on two levels. This is a much more open map, definitely favoring what Saints want to play with this Winston composition. And now we'll see if Trick Room have to adapt themselves, because this does not scream to me a Reinhardt 3-2-1 rush style of map, right? You need to have those longer sight lines a little bit, so it's now up to Trick Room to see if they can adapt a little bit more with a composition that potentially doesn't really favor what they want to do on something like Blizzard World.
Yeah, and we talked a lot about adaptation from this team specifically. You had mentioned the way that they've been able to work through this bracket, bring a lot of upsets, take down teams that we otherwise would not have seen in their position or even have been removed from the ability to play in this Pro-Am that's ahead of us. So I'm so hyper-focused on how that's going to look like. And there is some great, just overall, mechanical understanding, specifically when they had that second round, where that disengage and that representation and respect of distancing themselves from the dive was really, really well done. Granted, it didn't go favorably for them, but they have this overarching understanding of what is necessary for them to be actually able to compete against a team like Saints.
And it feels like Trick Room is going to need that if they continue to play this like Reinhardt style of composition, because a lot of the teams that we see in Overwatch League are trending more towards like the Hammond and the Winston style of composition. The Rush style of composition can work, and like especially on Antarctic Peninsula or Kings Row, you have a lot of those moments where that composition shines true. But I think that there is kind of this push and pull a little bit with the current meta, where it's like, can we really, what is the better composition? It hasn't settled just yet, but it feels like a lot of the teams are trending more towards what Saints are running. And Trick Room on the back end for themselves, it looks like they are finally going to stray away a little bit from that composition with the Reinhardt. Definitely makes sense on a map like this because of the fact that it's so open, and playing Reinhardt probably really difficult. I know Infected's been playing it pretty well, but still, it's probably nightmarish when you're just getting poked out from the other side of the map.
Yeah, and there's going to be a lot of weight on Infected's shoulder, because we've talked about it before too, and we've came to this map last time, and a variety of others, really, when you look at this type of heavy mobility, dive-centric idea. The Winston gets that instantaneous engagement. They're a very decisive team from Saints, where there needs to be a little bit of preparation from Trick Room, and they have to be perfect to deny the viability with Saints.
One of the things that Hammond does offer, though, in this scenario is that disruption, right? You have that ability to disrupt the dive if it goes in and try and control that high ground. Nice boot from Vega, though, to make sure that the pile driver does not hit that high ground. So now Saints have an ability to move forward because they know the Hammond is out.
And look at how far forward Tree is maneuvering in with the extra dive assistance in the back line. CJ, though, gets countered. Wonderfully done with a time pile drive from Infected to deny this initial engagement and first outlast the storm.
Yeah, not sure what happened there. I mean, maybe CJ just unfortunately didn't hit the Suzu or something like that, but he got blown up, and once the Kiriko is down in a composition like this, you lose a lot of that healing, and Saints the dive didn't necessarily combo along with what they wanted. Really good counter dive, I think, from Infected as well off the back end, as Saints were trying to go that aggressive, so Saints are going to be in this position where they have to retreat, have to play a little bit more in that neutral, and take that space away, but Infected is coming in through these back ends and not letting them do that.
Nice pile drive. Shield is there to give coverage just to the two right outside of it, so they aren't knocked up, but still a decent amount of crowd control gained, opening up an opportunity now onto the point, but Trick Room falling back. Disruptor shot greatly placed to get that chip damage onto the squad before they get themselves topped up from the support line. King hesitant. We're looking for re-entry, finding that window, making sure that they've got their dashes still available. The recall actually expended here since there was some decent focus. Boat tosses it out. Mikey goes down, and they've at least removed the tank from Saints.
Oh, and both still alive here. I mean, without the tank, it's going to be very difficult for them to win this fight. Infected is just trying to secure these kills with the rest of the teams, but Saints haven't died just yet, and Mikey will eventually be back.
And Tree is still holding on to this, gets clipped by the sound barrier even to make sure that they can re-enter onto this, but ooh, lovely play by Boat to take down King after the pulse bomb goes wide and doesn't get the value that they anticipated. CJ grouping back to give Tree assistance, and they're looking for a re-engagement.
They're trying as best as they can. They do have the Kitsune Rush advantage as well, but on the other side, Trick Room do have that sound barrier available to them to be able to counteract the incoming damage.
Pile drive option, does get it. Suzu holds through. Kitsune Rush active. Everyone from Trick Room is either playing the high ground or away from this so that they do not have to soak that extra boosted pressure that is down below. Tree, Suzu instantly finds the rail shot onto Pummy. They've been waiting for this window so that they can just completely view through it, and it is another shot on the high ground, and this is when Tree just does Tree things.
I mean, that is some unreal composure as well from Saints to kind of elongate that fight as long as they did. When they lost Mikey, I thought the fight was completely over. Like, there was no way I thought that they could come back in, but the peel from Saints to keep themselves alive and just continue trickling and trading in, knowing that they have some semblance of a respawn advantage, and Tree does all of that without using overclock. So now Tree has this in their back pocket. If they can get some like free sightlines into the backline, they can definitely carry this momentum throughout second as they move this cart forward with 3.5 minutes.
A lot of high ground going to be obtained from Trick Room until they can dive down onto the back or wait for Saints to be able to take the initiation, but it's not favorable to them. There's a lot of damage being funneled through this archway as they rotate down the side. Nice pile drive onto 2 for the moment, getting some decent percentage, making sure they've got this minefield ready. This Boat lingers in the back and waits for the engagement. Mine's out, dive comes through, pulse bomb held, recall actually has to be used.
Yeah, I mean, that was also a really good boot from Vega. As actually we go back in here, the engage is coming in, overclock from Tree, trying to find that back line.
Oh my goodness, gets it on the dash. Pummy is gone. Tree continues to just blow everyone up with rail shots and overclock, and they are once again in the advantage.
I mean, what'd you say? Tree doing Tree things there with the 5K, just ending it out right there. This is what Tree does. This is why we talk about the Tree factor and how prolific this player is. But I gotta give credit to the rest of the team as well. Vega is doing a phenomenal job in a lot of these fights, just booping Infected out of the way. Same thing with Mikey, putting shield down so the damage isn't there. They're playing really well around this ball composition.
And you can see utilizing a lot of this bridgeway and architecture to deny sight lines. Pummy shuts down to support, which is absolutely necessary. CJ's gonna come in with a Kitsune Rush, though, attempting to match it despite them being down a player. Mikey up top, harassing, dislodges Magic Mate Ball, and they are picked up. Pulse Bomb even sticks onto Pummy. King comes in with a swift 2-piece, and even though there's a Kitsune Rush from Trick Room, there's not really much benefit that can be gained from it.
Yeah, I mean, the sound barrier is just too much for Trick Room to deal with at this moment. It's just going to be Infected. There is a respawn advantage, but I don't think that's going to be enough. Infected is just stalling for as much time as they can right here in that moment, and Saints are going to be able to pick up this second point and start moving forward. Again, beautifully coordinated from them. The disengages as well, working really well in their favor, and King finally has gotten a little bit of room to work with. We saw in Antarctic Peninsula how much there was a struggle sometimes. Now you have this big open map. You can get into that back line with some of these pulse bombs and gain a lot of value, and that's exactly what King has been doing on this map in particular. But Trick Room can come back in. They have a minefield, so they can stop a lot of this engagement. They also have an overclock from Pummy, and Pummy very, very adept at this hero. The lethality that can come from this overclock could be big.
And you saw Boat look to try and play that counter side, but unfortunately it was responded with by King looking to regroup. Minefield out with that quicker activation makes it a little bit more dangerous, and everyone from Saints just falls back. Tree gets the counter pick before the overclock can even come out.
And Tree's about to have their own overclock here. Infected is trying to dive back in. They do get the mobility out of Tree, but Tree turns around and snipes Boat out of the sky. That is unreal from Tree, and overclock is still available for them.
It's like a 180 no-scope kind of thing when you see Tree play like this. I called it in Contenders. It's like 1-2 Tree. It's all done.
I mean, it's just, at that point, it's so hard if you're both there. You just, there's not, you kind of just hold your hands up and you're like, I just kind of got bodied there. As overclock available for Tree now. Same thing with the pulse bomb from King. We've seen how much value they've gotten out of these DPS ultimates before.
Overclock active. There's 3 clustered together into the right. Sound barrier from Magic Mate Ball manages to get some extra recovery, so Pummy can look to use theirs as well, making Saints play more defensively since they need that shield to dissipate before looking onto a re-entry.
And they can re-enter with their own tempo beat right here, and there they go.
Leading in, have the dominance and the opportunity to overwhelm everyone from Trick Room. They are locked in this small space that remains with Saints. The Kitsune Rush is the nail in the coffin, and they have time on the board, eradicating all of Trick Room.
A little bit shaky at the start, you know, for Saints. There was the first fight was a little bit spooky, but once they kind of got their bearings under them for the Saints team, they really started to take over the map. I do got to give, again, a lot of credit to Mikey and Vega, who didn't show up in the kill feed that much, but the fact that they were denying so much of the value coming in from the Hammond, I think was super important. Getting those boops, putting down the shield so that Infected isn't just continuously farming them for something like that minefield to get a lot of value. Infected didn't get that many minefields overall, right? And it's because the fact that this damage is being mitigated, and it's something that's what the really good teams do. The really good teams are like using those cooldowns effectively and waiting patiently, knowing how to beat the other team and what they want.
Also, in assistance to not only the boops, but Mikey on a couple of really key occasions, knowing that it was coming in, drops the shield, so the pile drive is only within the bubble itself. The players that are outside of it also not affected by that, so they're able to deny that additional increase in generating it, because realistically, you're right, I think there were only 2 occasions that we saw the mines that were specifically towards that second streets portion, and then also later on when they were looking to use it defensively before the final fight.
And it's especially because they know Minefield is such a strong ability in terms of the current meta. Like, you can just, if you don't have mobility cooldowns or you don't have Suzu, it's such a struggle to deal with. I know that there are people who have played ranked and solo queue right now and are just thinking about minefields and oh, I hate playing against that, as we're going to be seeing the classic Blizzard World TP Widow. Are we going to see any kills coming in from this from Pummy? What do they find? Grapple?
Second attempt? No.
Yeah, go back.
Go for one!
Smart from Saints. They know. They're very aware that we don't want to get caught with our pants down in this scenario.
Yeah, go for once, go for broke, go for twice. All right, I need to change. As Infected now plays to the inner wall. Waiting for that 5th player to get back online. Pummy now with the squad. Pile drive onto 2. A lot of damage, but the Suzu is there from CJ in the distance. Oh my goodness! Mikey's getting melted from the distance. That box wasn't big enough to block that round of fire.
I mean, that was such a good engage from Infected, and that time you didn't see the boop or the shield come down in time to negate the damage, so then it came a little bit late, and that's when Trick Room really pounced onto the enemy team of Saints, so a good engage that should be able to get them that first point really quickly. I mean, this is a potential for Saints to come back in, but they aren't going to be able to do so. They're just going to hold here at this corner, which I like, because this is a great place to hold if you're a defensive side from Saints.
Tree going aggressively again, maneuvering with Mikey up front. The shield is there now for the disengagement. Boats on the outside forces the recall, but soon to have the pulse bomb to try and bring down one of these supports.
CJ has also used his TP already, so they don't have that mobility cooldown left for themselves. Infected getting extremely low, but should be able to get healed up after that Suzu.
Yep, gonna be able to grab that Mega. Going back, pulse bomb, tossed, doesn't land, so now Boat has the advantage for looking for an instant pickup. Suzu is down, that's a chance, but CJ! Oh my! That's gonna be one that you regret, but unfortunately, as we said before, picks like that can just come out of nowhere.
Especially when you have the players of the mechanical caliber like Saints, right? Where sometimes there's just times where Tree is 180 hitting you in the head. If you're Boat, it's CJ hitting you with the kunai. There are times where fights are just going to end because of the fact that you have these mechanically gifted players on your team, and you just have to hold your hands up and say, we lost that one. We have to go again, as Infected goes in with a minefield. But another great boot from Vega.
Yep, there's still a pile drive up top, managing to get it. Wonderful mitigation from that, denying Boat's value. Another pile drive, a little shy in position. And Trick Room is playing very defensively at the moment. They know the Kitsune Rush is active. They maneuver into this room where it doesn't get the actual potential, but Tree comes in anyways. They've got this railgun generated so quickly that they don't even need to pop the overclock.
I mean, it's so wild to me that it's like, oh, Trick Room's on the defensive right here. This is their spawn right now.
Yeah.
It feels like Saints are the ones that are continuously on the front foot. They're using their ultimates very effectively here. Like we said, starting off with that Suzu and then saying, all right, we can go in. We have a Kitsune Rush available to them. Trick Room has used a lot of their cooldowns, and now we have the chance to go forward. And here comes an overclock from Pummy, but a nice shield to block it.
Yeah, and there's going to be double sound barriers. Kitsune Rush down the stairway, but this is still a lot of opportunity for Saints to hold on this high ground. Infected deviates away, getting Tree, which is a necessary component to remove from the squad, but Pummy is also eliminated. King down below. Oh.
I mean, this fight isn't even that clean. That's the thing about this, Rich, is that this fight is going back and forth, and look at what everything Trick Room has had to use in this fight. They've had to use everything, and they still might not even win.
Oh, the Pulse Bomb's gonna get rid of Hanbei. That's devastating. Magic Meatball has to fall back to spawn. 3 minutes on the time bank is a long time, but they're still caged in their spawn.
Saints have just been sitting here goalkeeping this entire time. Trick Room has not been able to leave this. They are going to finally start moving over to a different composition. The Reinhardt, maybe go to the Winston. I mean, it feels like they're thinking about what to do here, and they actually are going to mirror this time, and that is a little bit of a scary situation to me, because how well Saints are playing this, can you really mirror a team that's playing that good? You have to have a lot of good picks.
Oh no, and there is enough damage that comes through the overclock, going to be able to clean this up quickly. King just making sure that everyone's going back to spawn again here, despite the couple of body shots from Tree.
I mean, I think, what was it? Tree got a 5K, now King, I think also that was a 5K. Like, both these DPRs are trying to top each other, saying anything you can do, I can do better in these scenarios, and Saints continue to just hold, what, they capped with, what, 5 minutes, and it's now 2.5 minutes. This has been whittled down so much for them.
Entry up top on the stairway. Suzu now removed from the equation. CJ looking to stack back with the archway. They can give up the space. They have so much to work with now. The Kitsune Rush is active to look for a point of re-entry as they pivot around this corner. And once again, Trick Room in the midst of this. Their escape is not easily attainable, and it's just a lot of pressure that comes in from Infected, but they can't stand the damage once again from Tree.
The peel is so good onto Tree as well. You can see CJ just continuously trying to keep them alive as Infected is diving by themselves, and there's no way you're going to be able to get that kill if you're a Winston walking into a Sojourn who's getting pocketed by a Kiriko in that Kitsune Rush. So again, really well played from Saints to be able to peel for their carry members in a lot of these scenarios where now it's only a minute and a half left for Trick Room. They have a Kitsune Rush of their own, but we've seen how good Saints are at disengaging.
Yeah, so much time has been reduced on this bank. Mikey's just going to jump out. Look at how much value they're going to get from recovery. And again, that's only really the cart pushing this initial corner. It has the whole stretch to go. Vega's eliminated because there is at least a rail shot that comes through. And this is the first moment that Trick Room has been able to gain the opportunity of gaining a clear fight.
They spent like 4 minutes in spawn, and they're like, finally, we're free, we're out. We can breathe the air of Blizzard World right here, feel the rain on our skin. It's like the end of Shawshank Redemption in a lot of that way, but look what they had to give up just to get out of that room. They had to give up their Kitsune Rush. Luckily, they keep 3 of their other ultimates, but they only have 50 seconds left.
Pummy getting Delve on for the moment, but Mikey's just going to draw back. Vote actually takes down Vega here very far forward, and Mikey's low. Primal Rage is forced out, and this is now a little bit shaky for Saints. They've lost 2 because of Infected and continues to pummel them with their fists.
Yeah, a lot of momentum here for Trick Room throughout that second. It was, what, a singular fight, I think, for them, and then they just blitzed their way forward through second, and a scary scenario that it looked like it was happening at the start. They were able to finally break that defense, and now they can just go forward and take all this positioning away from Saints, get as much as they want, get as much extra credit as they want before they start moving that cart.
That was stellarly done, just continuing to just gain the stragglers. They're looking to reach this checkpoint. Now that they do have a minute and 35 seconds, there's still very minimal time to work with, but they just need to find a couple of more really great fights like that.
Yeah, I think Saints are holding a lot of their ultimates for this key moment where Trick Room don't really have anything to work with. They need to have the Kitsune Rush and the Sound Barrier very quickly here as here comes the engage from Saints.
Yep, Tree covered by the Sound Barrier, making sure that they don't even have to worry. There is no skip in a beat for this team, as there is one last chance with the 60 seconds, really, as they hold them at the door again.
I love where they're holding it, too, because they know that if this gets to overtime and they cap, they are going to be the only ones who have a chance to win this map, so just take as much space as you can away from the other team.
They jump to point. Look at how low Hummy is. A Death Blossom comes in from up top by King. Nice trades. Tree gets 2, so they're still staying equal with the numbers. Hanbei stuck in the Disruptor shot, making it extremely challenging to leave and getting the execution.
Vega is also able to boop Pummy out of this fight, and that's going to be... Now it's basically guaranteed that there's no way that Trick Room can get anything but a draw from this if they complete this map. And look at how aggressive Tree is posturing, just daring them on Trick Room to get into his sights while he has that rail charge.
Still hesitantly around this corner before entering in once again. The overclock active. Nice disruptor shot to cause some harassment, but the support's top Tree back up. Sound barrier active. Nice disengage to still maintain overclock damage and applied tension to Trick Room as they maneuver these final corners. Gonna go in with the Reaper. Unfortunately, could not get an optimal position to use the Death Blossom just yet and has to fall back with the Suzu also expended.
This disengage has been so good from Saints. Look how much they pulled out. They are going to be able to hold here. Boat looking for a TP potentially in that back line for Death Blossom.
Boat needs to get massive value with this. The Primal Rage from Infected will cause disruption. They're lost for the moment, being juggled along the wall. There is a huge chance to turn this back, but the Kitsune rush from Saints and the Primal Rage going to counteract the disruption that was initially there by Infected is now pushing them away from the card, denying their completion, and the overtime shall wither in front of their eyes.
It was close there for Trick Room for a bit, but Saints are able to hold at the very end, and I think that the way that they played that, I mean, even that last fight, the amount that they were able to just disengage and not lose members is incredible, because what that does is it gives time for players like Tree, like King to get into a moment where they can get into position to get these shots, get these clutch plays, get these clutch pulse bombs. I think this is something that Saints do probably better than anyone right now, is that ability to disengage, is that ability to play around the cooldowns of the enemy team, because we saw how long it took Trick Room to get out of spawn, and that was through an ultimate rotation.
Yeah. And we can just take a look at some of these stellar highlights to acknowledge that shot from Tree, just unreal with the dash coming out from Pommy.
He's good. I mean,
yeah.
He's really good. We talk about him a lot, but he is really, really good. Not only just on the Sojourn, but like in the past, on a lot of other things like the Echo, like the Tracer as well. I think Tree has a breadth of heroes that they can bring to the table, but this way this composition is being played from Saints, I think it's nigh perfect, especially the way that they were really, really hindering the ball play from Infected. Like that, to me, felt like kind of the moment that this map in particular felt like it was over, when you just saw the boops from Vega, the shields from Mikey to negate a lot of that incoming damage. That's really what tipped over the edge on that first attack.
Well, and when we did see Infected finally opt to change to the Winston, granted it was still a few attempts to try and gain a foothold to be able to counteract against Saints, it did look pretty decent. Like, there were occasions where they still found some value. They got the follow-up onto the chase. They caused disruption with the Primal Rage. There were a lot of these things that were starting to fall in place, which is good for them. And again, ties back to that adaptability, especially when you're going against a team who is so well refined like this. But since we've seen a 1-to-1 map score right now, we've got another map coming in a moment, but we have a break just before doing so. So don't go anywhere, friends, and we'll be back. Welcome back to all of you out there tuning in and enjoying the amazing Overwatch that we have for this evening. We're excited to see that it is a 1-to-1 score. Again, Trick Room able to take that initial map of control, and with some high resilience and some adjustments, they're able to at least battle back a little bit after a long spawn hold from Saints. So I have to give them some credit for being able to break that just sheer wall that Saints are. But, you know, going into this next one, I'm more curious to see how, after their adjustments being made on Blizzard World and still waiting on what the map selection is, what else we can see variation-wise and attempt to try and counteract Saints, who is still playing to a T.
Yeah, and we are going to be going to our next map. We do have it. It is going to be Junkertown, which is, to me, this is an interesting pick because there aren't a lot of escort maps that are in the pool that scream to me like, oh, this is really good for Rhine. Which is the biggest issue right now. Rialto, I think, would be the other one where I'd be like, the Rhine can really work here. I think Havana as well, theoretically, can do it, but you still have a lot of those long ranges to play. This one, it usually comes down to a DPS matchup when it comes to like Junkertown a lot of the time, right? It's about kind of these Widowmakers, these Hanzos, sometimes the Tracers as well are big indicators of like, who's going to win the map, who gets the better edge in those areas. And Tree is someone who I don't know if I necessarily would want to take to like a Junkertown, playing that Widowmaker, right? That's someone who I'm very scared about, but Pummy is also very good in their own right as a Widowmaker. So I think that's a matchup that if we do see kind of this Widowmaker versus Widowmaker type matchup, is one that's going to be incredibly impactful going forward to decide who can take this matchup.
And we've talked a lot about that larger picture of the dive and how they're working in the back line and getting those initial pickups. But having that separate little facet of the Widowmaker and those types of duels between the two is something that can really contribute to a lot of that as well. If you get that pick, if you find that opportunity, and then even in addition to that, also the way that they look to play the Widowmaker, and it's this positional surprise factor, like weaving around some of those minor walls towards where that off like cliff is, and even some of like the water tanks that are there. There's a couple of really surprising things that you can gain, as we actually do have confirmation that there will be a swap out as well for the roster of Saints.
It looks like False is going to be coming in for Mikey. So this automatically, I'm just like, okay, off tank, right? That's what False is bread and butter. Is that Diva is something that False is kind of known for and made their name for as a player. You know, back when we were testing them in collegiate, back in tier 2, right? That Diva was extremely potent. I think they probably have a very good Sigma under their belt too, but that screams to me that they're moving away on Saints' side, moving away from the Winston. Like, that's really something that I think Mikey excels at. We saw how they were able to play it in that grand finals in Overwatch League, and now even here in this series, they've been playing it pretty phenomenally. So with False coming in, I expect to probably see that Diva or something like a Sigma to match up and give a little bit more of that space taking than something like a Winston where you kind of just have to, you know, hop one place to one place and kind of just like do it very slowly in a map like that and leave yourself a little bit more vulnerable.
Yeah, it's like the frog lily pad like metaphor where it's just like floop, 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 like each little lily pad across like.
Wasn't there like a board game that was like that? Like, what was it?
Was there?
It was. I'm thinking about Gator Golf.
I was gonna say, I'm like, because at first I was like, I'm thinking Frogger, where it was like, you know, you had to go across the road and stuff, and those lily pads. But I didn't actually know if there was a board game. Watch, somebody's gonna add us on Twitter and be just like, there was a board game. We're gonna be like,
there's a board game for everything. I feel
really
like at this point, like it feels like there's really just a board game for like every type of child thing that you could ever see. But as we go into our map here of Junkertown, are going to be seeing Trick Room on that defensive end, starting things off back on that Hammond composition. Interesting that they're going to be opting in for the Brigitte on the defensive end. We usually see this comboed along sometimes with the Ana. I think the Brigitte does like have a good place here because you can bring a lot of disruption. You can almost guarantee essentially your procs of Inspire with your whip shot against something like a Diva. So don't necessarily hate this decision coming in from Trick Room, but they are going to have to be very aware of like keeping that Inspire proc up. And it does do a very good job at keeping Hanbei alive. The question is, can they keep them alive through the onslaught of like the Tracer and the Sojourn into them?
And this will also be a great representation of the discussion of how valuable the Zenyatta is, and there have been players who have really hyped it up. We had that in the interview discussion where Zen is a very strong pick. It's just how you play around it, and between these two, we're going to see who can yield the most value.
And we also see on Trick Room on the defensive end, they are bringing the Sombra to the table, so they do have a potent dive with this team of Trick Room, right? If they find someone in that back line, they can get onto it with 3 members of Trick Room, and from the Zenyatta and the Brigitte, they can help a little bit with that dive. You can see Tree on the flank here. Nice whip shot from that Brigitte to continue to proc that Inspire and keep themselves alive.
Hanbei out in the open a little bit, but manages to get the Discord onto Tree for some pressure up top, but Pummy goes down. Vega gets the takedown from the Zen play, and I'm feeling we're going to see a lot more of that as this continues. With already a minute off the clock, they're approaching this checkpoint, and most of Trick Room has to fall back.
That's a main support, by the way, doing that. Vega gets another one on Hanbei. This is not the Lucio player that I know of. This is on another level right now from Vega getting those 2 kills, and that should be the complete fight for them. They have no way to get back onto this if you're Trick Room. I think Infected can try and get back on, but they're going to stall just the best they can. But look at Vega. No one's contesting Vega.
Seeing what they can do to deny it in the near future, but it's just free farming, leaving them to do whatever they choose. The Discord Orb is also going out heavily onto Infected and just guaranteeing that there is no way to recover from that influx of damage.
And this is where I wonder if we do see something swap from Trick Room. Like, do we see the Ana come into play? Because Maple, to their credit, has been like doing okay with like some of these whip shots, but they're just not in positions to really get a lot of value as the Brigitte. Your packs do have that 25 insta heal right now, but still, it's very difficult unless you're kind of in that brawl a lot of the time. Here in an enclosed area of the second point, I think you can get a lot more value in this scenario, but look at Saints. They already have a nano boost to work with. Throw that onto the Diva, and you can get a lot of picks there.
Yeah, just refined understanding of how this control in position. As now Vega in the back gets a decent couple of shots again with that Discorder, making sure that Infected can't play out in the open because that chip damage is going to rapidly accelerate when they move out. Transcendent's still available, and there's a couple of ults as well here for this engagement. Now going in.
Over to the MP. Vega gets Pummy again, though!
Oh my goodness!
Vega's just out of it, playing out of his skull. This is a Lucio player, by the way. This is a main support player who is doing this. This is, like, unreal from Vega.
It is beautifully done, and now they're going to be able to have 4 minutes to continue pushing this and more than halfway in this second segment.
I didn't know Vega had a Zen. Like, this is pretty insane. That's the second time that Pummy is just getting caught with their pants down, and they're actually just opting away from it. They're completely saying, I don't want to flank you anymore. I'm going over to the Cassidy, giving myself a little bit more of that just frontline presence and survivability because I cannot contest you anymore. That's a respect pick if I've ever seen one coming out from Trick Room.
Infected now, looking to still maintain the high ground down below. Gets actually a really great bolo down below with a grapple to give a massive tension onto King, who has to force the recall. Pummy and Hanbei finally stifle and stem the bleeding for the moment, but Saints is still going to harass. They're going to look to try and get this damage onto Infected until they can get out of here, but the D-Mech close in time.
Yeah, now that Pummy's back on the Cassidy, you offer a little bit more of that long-range potential, so if CJ does kind of stick out a little bit, you can secure those kills. Maple's able to take down False to kind of just reset this fight completely, and this is going to be where I think Trick Room really has to make their stand in this scenario, because now you have a great position to be able to hold against what Saints is bringing to the table. You have a lot of avenues for Ball to get a lot of good value from the high ground with those pile drives. Zen gets the sight lines perfectly for them, and so does Pummy, so this is where Saints have to be a little bit, creative with their engagements by, like, throwing out a bomb or something like that to kind of cause disruption and create that space for themselves.
Down below transitioning as a 5, you can see Boat waiting. Hanbei almost gets taken down there, but the pulse bomb able to be tossed and eaten by False. Wonderful timing, reading that beautifully as everyone from Trick Room continues to rotate onto the outside doors, but this high ground is obtained by Saints. They're still putting a lot of pressure. Shield blocks the incoming pulse, but there is just still too much for Magic Maypal to withstand.
CJ was able to take down with the anti, but they're trading kills back and forth here. False is able to take down Hanbei. That means no healers right now for Trick Room. Brig needs to come back with this rally if they want to have a chance of winning this fight.
Infected's going to get a nice follow-up onto Tree on the high ground, too. False is still here, forcing them back and able to get some distance with this.
I think this is going to be contestable by Trick Room. Maypal has a potential to be able to use that rally to just go in and try and cause a lot of disruption. False is relatively low because the healers aren't there for the Saints, but they are back now. Self-destruct available for False as well, so giving themselves that extra life whenever Trick Room wants to come back and re-engage.
They have a lot to work with moving into this. CJ and King nearing that ultimate defense matrix proc to block that incoming shots. Boat actually gets a little aggressive, nearing that pulse bomb to utilize, as they once again fall back and look for reset.
Rally's been committed by Maypal here, and not a lot of people got the shielding from it. Vote has a little bit of it, but here goes False.
Dives in, self-destruct available. There is that defense matrix, so it's not allowing Hanbei to get the extra damage up front as everyone clusters together. That's 2 down. A D-Mech with a self-destruct for the moment. No one's within range, but they're able to stabilize and hold on to push the last few meters.
I mean, that was some confidence right there from Saints. They'd send Tree in with the nano and the overclock and say, hey, try and take this one down. They end up doing so, but the trades came too quick, and they were able to take down the members that were effective in that fight, taking down that backline. So important to get Saints that victory to go through and get second, go starting it now into third. As Trick Room staying on this composition, I mean, it's been working relatively well for them. 2.5 minutes is nothing to scoff at as an opposing time bank, but Saints now have an ability to hold this high ground with that Diva. Vega can get a lot more of these sight lines that they want, and we know Vega has gotten some pretty good value so far with these sight lines.
False gets out from that high ground, position to regroup below. A lot of just patient play to see if Trick Room's going to move out, and Vega could just, as we've seen already, just take someone's skull off with these orbs and how they've been focusing it. But again, this is just keeping this payload moving down below.
There's still, I mean, that's one of the things about D.Va that's so good, is that you can continuously just juggle the point and also get to high ground on demand. As Maypal gets blown up by King, that was a one clip, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah, Tree is going to give even more opportunity to press, especially with False. They're going to couple together. They now take this high ground.
And that's just a fight-free win where they don't have to use any ultimates. Again, they're just continuously, methodically moving this forward, knowing that they can get to high ground if they want to. Here comes a minefield off the back end.
Very spread. There's a lot of avenues to maneuver through them, so they don't have to be as worried due to the elevation of when it's activated. They'll clear up the rest of them, fall back for the regroup. They've got more than enough time to push with 1 minute and 15 seconds that they're going to work with. Pulse Bomb, unfortunately, gets CJ. Transcendence comes out aggressively for Trick Room to collapse onto Saints and not allow them this method of stability, but you've got Tree and King still doing wonders and at least able to get rid of one of the supports. Hanbei unable to really do too much more if they get focused down.
Yeah, Trick Room really wanted to buy into that fight. A very aggressive Transcendence to try and just win the fight overall, but a nice counter Transcendence from Vega. And now look at Saints. They have a lot of ability to come back and win this fight. Tree's going to have Overclock. You can throw the Nano onto him or onto the Diva to really just win this fight. Maypal needs to find Rally in time before this fight starts.
Oh no, Tree goes down. Pummy gets a massive lead into this, and there's no overclock that they've got now for this fight. 30 seconds, and they've got to just look for a regroup, but they're rallying. They're aggressing. Trick Room wants to take advantage of this and pick them off even further before there's any semblance of regaining a full 5, and they take it with 20 to go.
And they made Saints panic a little bit. Saints like committed into that fight. They nanoed the Diva just to try and get them in and see if they could buy it back in, but only 10 seconds left for the Saints. They do have a Tracer and a Diva. Potentially King can get here to proc that overtime, but there's only 5 seconds left, and Trick Room are playing Goldie.
King almost gets eliminated. The recall instantly active, so now they've lost that defensive. The magnetic grenade lands onto Tree, and they shut them down up top. Pummy coming in big. There is going to be extra assistance with the armor packs and coverage from the support line. Trick Room managed to hold on in the last few meters to deny Saints from completion, and the goalpost has been sent as they take the swap of sides.
And that looked so much, I think from the entirety of Trick Room, on second, it looked so much better. The Brigitte was getting a lot more value. It's so much harder in that like first point where you're just so wide out in the open, but there I think Maypal really, really well played, especially with a lot of the peel. There was the one time that they got one clipped, but you know, sometimes you just take that one on the chin. A lot of Zenyatta highlights that we're going to be seeing in these replays, but I think Saints probably going to be happy with just getting it to where they did. Usually this is a map where you're like, hey, if we completed it at all, we're okay with that.
There's so many Zen plays. It's like 90% of this, realistically.
I love Zen.
It's great.
I feel like the community is like split on like, you know, is Zen really good? This was also a really nice play from Pummy, just holding this high ground for the dive coming in from Tree, taking down that very important member. And the Hammond has been getting a lot of value, I think, from Infected as well. Again, going into this, the kind of question for Trick Room was, how are they going to play when they're forced off the Rhine composition, right? They're so good at the 3-2-1. That's what got them here, right? That's what buttered their bread. But now that they're moving over to some of these other compositions, I'm not as worried as I was like going into this, right? I think that they've been playing a lot of these compositions exponentially well and have really kind of strengthened their case for like being a team that can go into the Pro-Am main event, which they are, and get some value.
Yeah. As we take the swap of sides, we can look defensively. False is going to bring out the Sigma here, which is something that we were leaning into in conversation, and the value that it's going to bring for this team defensively, especially when we talk about the two underpasses on this initial push.
Yeah, I think on the defense it works really well, and one of the things it does really good too is that it does negate a little bit of the Zenyatta, right? You can kind of just hold that space in front of the Zen and make Hanbei's life miserable, and Hanbei has to respect the incoming damage from that Sigma. And you see Pummy back on that Sombra. Oh, but they see the translocator. They're going to try and translocate King out, and then Pummy's going to get the kill. They're trying to find King.
King not really diving in just yet. It's a stalemate for now until they can find it. And King's just going to play a respect. They're not going in just yet.
Yeah, they're waiting patiently, and I mean, Pummy can hold this angle as much as he wants, because that's one of the things about this composition is now they see that the Sombra is here. They haven't gotten them out of stealth just yet, but look at Pummy still just being patient there. They finally do destroy that translocator, and now they're going to try and see if they can find King.
Yeah, and they're rounding back to give assistance. The dive comes in, Wrecking Ball with the pile drive makes it a little more challenging. Boat unable to get those dashes out, so they are a sitting duck for the moment as Pummy is attempting to get counteracted, but their translocate gets them out of there, and King does the same.
That was a really sick engagement from Infective in particular. Getting all the way over to that, over to where the supports are going to trade their life for it, but it's not going to matter too much as Trick Room should be able to take this first point. A really good engage to start things off, and again, very impressed with how they're playing a composition that I wasn't expecting them to have so much, film on, have so much practice on, and they look like a well-oiled machine, especially against someone like Saints, who we think is like of the best team that we have in NA. Trick Room is playing up to their potential right now.
And we have a lovely viewpoint of Magic Maypal showing the tech there with the Brig that we don't get to see too much of recently with the Brig play, and it's doing wonders for them. As up top there's two, almost gets a pickup. Hanbei continuing to put damage to counteract the value that somebody can have, but again, now playing down below and looking to see where the high ground's going to be from Saints.
We're looking at Tree with that pulse bomb ready and available to them, checking Boat, making their life a little bit miserable. Recall forced out here, so Tree has a little bit of advantage in the duel right now.
Yep, Tree gonna now look to have to force a fallback. Still has the recall available though, so they can reattempt an engagement. Feels still safe, but that's a lot of damage, and King comes in from the wings, making sure that both supports are eliminated from the equation. Trick Room now, they've got to abandon ship.
That's beautiful scouting from King in particular, seeing those supports by themselves, and Tree goes in. The other thing that's great about Tree is that the amount of patience that they have a lot of the time with their cooldown usage, because there it's very easy to just like throw out that pulse bomb and say, guarantee those kills, but King and Tree have confidence in themselves to just not really need it, so that Tree can continue to have this pulse bomb and always be a threat. There always has to be Trick Room thinking about where is this pulse bomb going to be coming from.
We'll see if this EMP is going to land. It gets guaranteed one. Hanbei eliminate. This is an instant reset. They're done and dusted from that one ultimate and go back.
No way that you can do that, and again, good scouting as well to start things off. And again, it's a really nice pounce from Saints, as Trick Room though going to come back into this with 5 ultimates of their own in this next fight. But the ultimate economy isn't too dastardly for them, right? Saints are still going to have 4 ultimates of their own because they won that with just that singular EMP. So it's not an ultimate economy canyon that they have to fight up against here. They are on relatively even ground as all these particles are going to come through. They got
Transcendence out of that? They were...
Yeah, that was Pulse.
Yeah, to deny Tree with that ultimate. Again, they're keep expending one at a time here and can now look for another engagement.
Slowly rotating as here comes the Transcendence.
Yep, you do see CJ managing to try and give some extra assistance to the team since they're in this narrow stairway. Vega giving a nice kick to knock back Infected, who's looking for a follow-up pile drive, has a lot of that active shield to hold on, and they do turn this around in these narrow corridors. Magic Maypal even getting a nice whip shot to knock back and force out that defensive.
And in these enclosed areas, it was a really good start. See, Vega hit a perfect Transcendence there. I don't think it could have been better, but in these enclosed areas and in these brawls, the Brigitte just gets so much value, especially with Rally in their back pocket. Falcus is able to eat a bomb from Boat, and Boat actually goes down, so Saints can go back in here.
Oh no, that's so terrible that you not only lose the pulse, but then even more so your life in the exchange. Infected gets hit by the bio, and now has to flee and wait for that to fall off. Self-destruct and to zone them back even further. 2 minutes on this time bank. Trick Room at this point now looking to get back online, but unfortunately, Boat's there too late. Hanbei goes down, and Saints are going to take advantage of this.
False probably will end up going down as well, and actually, is there going to be able to be a recontest here from Saints? They are getting extremely low, but the healing from CJ and the output here is keeping those members alive.
Yep, you're going to have now, there's so much focus onto Vega, but they just can't get rid of them. CJ is doing work right now, and there isn't enough angles that can come in from damage since they're continuing to maintain that doorway. Vega goes back in aggressively. The EMP lands onto 2. Tree and CJ still being managed by it. Transcendence Transcendence is going to stabilize Saints, and Trick Room once again has been forced away.
I mean, CJ deserves so much credit. That was False wasn't in that fight either. King wasn't even relatively in that fight. They had to retreat back, and CJ just keeps the members of this team alive, which we know with how good CJ is mechanically on a lot of these flex supports. They're pumping out so much healing that Trick Room was just not able to turn the tides enough in their favor. And Trick Room, with only a minute left, will probably just get this one last chance. They have a Pulse Bomb to work with. They're probably going to get Minefield from Infected and a Transcendence. So that's really going to be the things that turn this over. Pulse Bomb misses completely from both, so that's one ultimate that you don't have now.
Nope, and there's going to be a force of Translocate. They're so distant from the team. Boat's eliminated. Now Trick Room with only 45 seconds to go. They have to abandon ship again because they're going to get one last shot.
And this has been the second time where Boat's been focused down really heavily in this fight and dying early and already putting Trick Room on the back foot. They can come back into this still with that Transcendence available to them, still with the Minefield, but look at all the angles that Saints have to play with here, and look at the positioning as well from the supports. They know exactly where they need to be to not just get Goomba stomped by a Minefield.
Minefield active towards the back line. Bionade lands. Infected needs to be cautious, and while they're aggressing on the front, Tree in the back is cleaning up the supports. The stick goes wide. Nice whip shot to mitigate it, but as there's a rotation back to the point, Pummy comes in to deny the tank. False is out, but so is Infected. Tree underneath still bobbing and weaving around this, and the fact that Magic Maypole is still holding on to this is a wondrous play, and they're utilizing that health pack underneath to sustain, but can't do so for any longer since King comes in with the backup assistance.
Oh, and that's going to be Magic Maypole going down with the Zenyatta as well. Infected's just going to say, I'm not even bothering right now. I'll do a little dance and end up going down. Saints are going to win, but how big are the brains on Saints? I mean, Tree there just one-clipping the Zenyatta off of that high ground completely wins that fight. That means there's no Transcendence whatsoever for the team to go forward, and that's just great scouting again from them, knowing that they're going to dive onto our back line, but the Zenyatta and Brigitte cannot follow. So if I can just stay here and maybe get a pick, maybe get a Pulse Bomb, I can completely flip the fight on its head, and that's exactly what happens there for Saints.
And the fact that it happens so quickly, there's no time for Magic Maypole to really respond with the clean whip shot. There's been a couple of really good ones that's able to knock away the Tracer play, but in moments like that, there's just not a fast enough reaction time to do so.
He did it so quickly, Zen couldn't even trench. Yeah. That's how quick like he did it quick enough to where the Zen just completely got caught off guard. I think there's no way that Hanbei is thinking that there's going to be a Tracer here, right? That's one of the things about sometimes the Maryville position or the Saints positioning, where they'll be in these positions that you're not really thinking of, but it's so smart to be in, and that's sometimes where they catch people off guard.
And just again, extreme understanding of their ultimate economy, piggybacking off of what we talked about here, where there's just this consistent rotation of these ultimates, not overcommitting, extremely strategic on what they need to expend, so they find themselves in a position that they are confident to look to the next fight, then the follow-up one even.
And I think another thing that they did really well towards the back end of that was they did focus Boat a lot. Boat was getting a lot of value just getting into that back line, being a nuisance, but there were two times that we saw at the very end where he was hard focused down, and once that Tracer is out of the fight, that means Tree can play even more freely than they did before, because they don't have to worry about a TVT. Same thing with the supports. They don't have to worry about just getting Pulse Bomb from out of nowhere. So I think really good transitioning from Saints to kind of say to False, you're going to have to babysit the backline a little bit. It's fine. We have Tree and King on the other side. They should be able to win that 2v2 matchup against the supports.
And now at this point, we find ourselves on a match point where we do have only one map away from Saints to be able to enter into that grand finals. As we mentioned earlier, though, again, these players are going to the Pro-Am, but now they're just playing for bragging rights and a sweet cash prize.
Yeah, and I mean, they're also playing for kind of just like the practice as well.
That too, yeah.
We're against like these teams where it's like you're obviously scrimming, and like before going into the Pro-Am, you definitely want to get all your ducks in a row in terms of that regard. But just like in a competitive environment, it does make a little bit of a difference, I think, for some of these teams instead of like what they're scrimming with. So it does give them that practice, because they are going to be facing up against the best Overwatch League has to offer, right? So you need as much practice as possible, and they're getting it in this tournament.
Mm-hmm. And it'll be surprising how fast that time will just vanish in front of their eyes in preparation, and then it'll be like the day of competition too. So that's why they're
like a week and 4 days from now. Like
it's gonna go by real fast, especially for all those
up on us.
Yeah. But now we can take a look at the roster again. There is going to be an adjustment since we are looking to this next map type. It's going to be Mikey that's going to be subbed back in, since it was specifically to have False for that Junker Town selection. And at this point, we're going to go back to the tried and true, something that we've seen consistently, and just really keep an eye on the timing, as we have confirmation as well that there has been a decision leaning into Coliseum.
And that tells me Reinhardt. That's what this map screams. I mean, it feels like every push map is kind of like Reinhardt specific. There, granted, we did see like Esperanza earlier where they did play the Winston with Redbird. So it's not like a guarantee type thing. This map, it feels like a guarantee. This map, it feels like if you're picking this map, you really want to play that Reinhardt composition. And it is Trick Room who have shown that that's their best composition. I mean, the one map that they won against Saints was because that they were playing that Bastion composition and the Rhine composition so well. Works really effective on Coliseum as well. The difference is that Coliseum has a little bit more of that openness, right? You can have King on these flanks on Tracer and play a little bit more safer in that regard. It's not going to be the same thing where you don't really have anywhere to move as a Tracer. You have angles to play around. That's going to be something that we have to keep an eye on.
Well, and also just really focusing on the initiation of these engagements specifically. We talk about the very first one and how we're looking to see what type of value that can be brought. And Tree specifically, when we got to see in Contenders, when it came to this map with the compositions, that you basically just wait for that initial pick to come through. So our eyes are going to be on Tree and Pummy initially to see who gets that first takedown, who gets that elimination that starts the snowball effect to at least start gaining that initial advantage to start looking towards that long haul of this 10 minutes in a push.
And it'll be a bit of different on like how they play with that first pick, because if it is going to be the Reinhardt composition from Trick Room, you're going to be waiting to like find that one person out of kind of order with a wall and then just go in with Pummy, 3, 2, 1, go forward. That's kind of what this composition likes to do really well. But on the other end, if it's going to be the same composition from Saints that we've seen before with a little bit more of that poking style, you're going to be looking for Tree to maybe get an off angle in that back line, trying to see if they can charge up that rail shot and find someone beyond the shield, because that's a lot of the time how you beat compositions like this, where you find that just like one pick, whether it's like a Hanzo or a Sojourn, you find that one pick past the shield on like a very important member, and it kind of just devolves from there.
And as we have these final seconds, we can see that it's not going to be a Rhine versus Rhine, but we're going to have at least Infected looking to lean in with it, and Pummy going to go onto the Hanzo to see if they can gain value with that. And I do as well.
I like it. I think it's a really good decision, because you're not going to necessarily have the same value of the Bastion in the mirror as you would have. Like, this is good because you have a lot of that potential to shoot from long range. You have the same kind of pick potential as Sojourn, just a little bit more on demand with your continuous spam of arrows. And look at this rotation from Saints. They want to get onto that backline.
Diving quickly, but doesn't really bode too well, because the reposition by the supports and how Magic Mayfall's been playing onto the wall, they instantly take a swap of sides, and they're just going to gain some distance in this.
Yeah, I mean, this is great for Trick Room, because now they can just hold this point, and there goes Pummy with the pick onto Tree. Wow. That's exactly what the Hanzo can bring to the table.
Looking for a pin into the wall as well from Infected to take down King with a swing, and that's going to now gain even more distance, because you already gained the initial 20 pushing into this, and you can look to try and play the high ground as well.
And that was a really good rotation from Trick Room, where they said, okay, if they're going to spend all of their cooldowns to try and get to Pummy, we'll just go take Cart, and that's all of your cooldowns lost. And Pummy, we know, is no slouch on any of these DPS heroes, right? They can match up sometimes with the best of them. And there's already an early Ant Matrix. This is going to be a lot of free progress that Trick Room is going to get just based off of this ultimate already.
And you can see that Recon Bolt gaining extra information up top of where that Tracer from King is. Oh my goodness, almost takes him down as well. Dive comes in the back, Disruptor shot from Tree, able to zone them away from that high ground, dropping down below. There's a little bit of separation from the team, but the Immortality Field comes in, but they're not able to cluster together fast enough, and both DPS are brought down.
Yeah, I mean, this is fine if you're Trick Room in the scenario, right? Because you've gotten a lot of value off of it. It was a really good dive from Saints to counter contest here. Infect is going to get one less charge and work his knees a little bit. Reinhardt's an old man, you know, gotta make sure everything's working squeaky clean down there, but it's going to be Saints starting to gain their own percentage right now and their own meterage as they go forward. But the scary thing about this is Trick Room is coming up on a lot of key ultimates that are going to be very adept at dealing with what Saints are bringing to the table in an enclosed area like this.
Couple of shots onto Mikey, waiting to dive in onto this. Pummy has the Dragon Strike available. Kitsune Rush is active, will use it here as they press forward towards the ending point in that archway, causing a little bit of separation for Saints, but there is still a lot of opportunity with this blizzard. Boat locks them down, they're stuck in place, frozen to the ground, and their heart has stopped.
And I mean, that's the thing about this composition, right, with Trick Room, where it's like, if you just throw down your ultimates, you have so many key effective ones that get so much value. Even though Mikey is primaling, even though you're using that Kitsune Rush, the Blizzard just negates all of that. And look, they flip the map again, so Saints are completely split apart.
Infected, though, very aware of this high ground angling. Mikey drops down, still has the jump available since they continue to maintain that high ground. Shatter onto Tree, but there's a sound barrier. Vega's attempting to keep this going. King's eliminated, and unfortunately, there's not enough protective barrier to get through that kind of damage.
I mean, we talked about this a little bit on Blizzard World, but I think here, Mateball deserves a lot of credit for doing something similar to what Vega was doing on Blizzard World, where Mikey is trying to get these dives in and get into that backline, but Mateball is always there with a boot. Oh, in fact, getting so low.
Wow, working through it. There was a couple of those shots, I believe, just on the opposing side of the Ant Matrix to fuel them through it. They've reached the checkpoint, and that's a massive opportunity because now you don't have to worry about this time dedicated for the bots to presume that movement. Hanbei in the back, and Overclock gains one onto both. They're threading the needle on this wall. It'll finally go back in favor of Saints, but this is still a worthwhile push onto that checkpoint.
Yeah, especially with getting that Overclock out of Tree. That's one of the things that turned that fight, but now you don't have to worry about it in this next fight. And by the time we get to like where we are back in the neutral, it's going to be back in this enclosed area. Pummy has actually switched over to the Cassidy to offer a little bit more of that front-loaded damage and make King work a little bit harder for a lot of these picks. And it's a one fight for Saints, but they don't get anything in terms of positioning or really any progress.
Yeah, we've gone back to this original neutral positioning and how this rotation is going to occur from Trick Room. Kitsune into that upper stairway. Charge comes out. Suzu prevents it from gaining value. Infected is being absolutely pummeled and gets that pulse bomb just behind the shield. So they've lost their tank and now look to just finalize the rest.
And that's just unfortunate. The sound barrier barely just did not hit Infected there. Hit everyone else, but unfortunately, Infected was not covered by that shield and went down to a pulse bomb. And that's Trick Room losing that fight. And now it becomes a little bit scarier for them because we go to a more enclosed or more open area of this map. We can have Tree and CJ poking from this high ground, and Trick Room have to use and work a lot to try and get back onto this cart. Luckily, if they end up doing so, they have a Shatter and they have a May Blizzard, things that can win fights outright by themselves.
We're almost there.
We'll see if that comes to fruition down below. Big shot onto Hanbei, but the Immortality Field is now gone. No longer have that defense. The Blizzard buys space for them. And the Amplification Matrix boosts the damage, but Tree is still getting so much value up top, just free farming for now, even playing this little wedge to just put extra pressure onto Trick Room, who can't leave that box.
Really good peel from Saints where they knew that Trick Room wanted to come back into that fight it on the low ground, and they were all separated. You saw that there were some people on the high ground, so the rest of the people who were caught in the Blizzard or potentially near the Shatter just got out, and it was really well played in terms of the peel as well from those supports. And now we're going to match here as Infected goes in and tries to contest this point.
Yeah, draws down below, making sure that they keep contention just before the checkpoint, still maintaining that advantage since we only have 4 minutes left. King looking to put the pulse bomb onto the high noon. That's a guaranteed stick to Pummy and a +1 onto Magic Mateball.
Oh, Mikey has gone down, though, and Hanbei is still alive, so there's still the healing and stalwart presence right now from Trick Room to hold before Saints can bring this one over. Mikey's actually desperately swapped over to the Hammond just to get back closely. Yeah. Tree takes down Hanbei. That's a lot of the healing lost.
They want this checkpoint. They're in desperate need of it so that they can look to try and take this fight, but unfortunately it's still favoring Trick Room at Tree. As we've seen before, have been able to pull things out of nowhere, and with the assistance of CJ, they're actually regaining control of this and will gain the checkpoint.
Crazy clutch from CJ and Tree there. I mean, CJ specifically. Tree was about to die. If that Suzu was timed a second later, they'd end up going down, and they don't have the ability to bring that one back. Perfectly timed from a Kiriko player that we know to be one of the best that we have in contenders overall. And now it's a lead finally for Saints against this composition that Trick Room is so adept at.
And look at how Magic Mateball is playing, as we saw earlier on the reverse side. Great boop already, denying that knockoff on the bridgeway. Just no pile drive to come through. Now we reset and get this push back where Saints are going to look for the neutral.
But I like this decision from Saints to kind of just take what they got in terms of lead and then go back in when they have their cooldowns.
Big damage onto the pile drive in the back from Mikey, but able to have enough of the adaptive shield to hold on as the supports play up top. Nice wall to block the sightlines. That's going to force a reposition by Saints unless they just hyper-eliminate one of those pillars, but they don't have a sightline anyways. The Kitsune Rush brings them into the small room again. Deja vu moment for Saints to be able to shut them down.
I mean, look at the mental RAM as well that like you have to deal with. As CJ is gonna have a little bit of fun there, but the mental. We saw Infected's POV that entire time, and he's just looking around with his shield. There's things coming from everywhere. It's like the beaches of Normandy, like Dora was saying earlier. Like there's so many angles that they have to deal with. Whether it's the Sojourn, whether it's the Tracer, whether it's Mikey with the minefield coming in right now.
Oh, Shatter. They hyper-focus Mikey as we've seen before, but this time actually still get out. The healing comes through. The assistance from Saints. They are such a well-oiled machine, as we've commented before, and despite them dedicating that, there's still 4 more to work with. They need to deny it.
This feels like Saints are just kind of saying, like, okay, the download's complete, like, we know how to beat this composition. We're just going to assert our dominance. Trick Room, though, do have some ultimates to come back in with. They have 4 in their back pocket. They can create some space with them, but look at the aggressiveness posturing from Saints here. They're not scared in the slightest.
No, they're not. And Shree, as we've seen many a times before, plays just like this and overwhelms the backline, but Pummy gets a triple with the flanking Deadeye. Nobody ready for it, and that turns it around with a minute 30 and a team kill.
That was one that Saints were not expecting whatsoever there. They forgot completely about Pummy with that Deadeye. A minute and 15 seconds left. Your Trick Room are going to need a couple more fights like that. They luckily have a Blizzard to work with, but they used a lot in that last fight, and Saints are going to be able to come back in here with an overclock from Tree and a Pulse Bomb from King. 2 ultimates that we know they're so lethal with.
Will this be a 3rd time stuck in a corner, Blizzard? No one's able to get locked down into it, and there's a pulse bomb in the back. They go back to this neutral position and again are knocked into the side. They cannot leave, and 50 seconds now for once again Saints to have the advantage.
Man, these engages from Saints are so crispy. Mikey going into the backline, King following up perfectly. They get out Immortality Field, and then King comes back in with a nicely placed Pulse Bomb directly onto that Baptiste. And Trick Room don't have any legs to stand on in terms of ultimates right now. They have to win this in the neutral. And then not even that. They are so far behind in terms of that meterage. It's going to be a Herculean effort to keep this series going.
CJ playing the backside, still getting free damage onto Infected, and looking to see what else they can do. They're just taking it. CJ's just chilling there. They've got a way to get out. No concern. Suzu themselves. Hack is going to go on to Vega. They can't quite grab them, though, as they wall ride to a defensive position until Pummy finds an angle. Kitsune Rush is going to be extremely challenging to work through because they have to commit into this. Trick Room gets a pin, maneuvering down the rampway, but the minefields cause some separation onto the barricade. Rotating back in, Mikey gets the advantage. The Shatter knocks down 2, though. CJ and Mikey, they're low. They've been eliminated. Trick Room desperately playing to not find themselves dropped to the lower bracket, and there's still some contention by both with the assistance of Hanbei.
Oh, it's just desperation right now, and they are able to just, from the jaws of defeat, bring that one back and give themselves an extra life here, and luckily for them, Saints actually committed quite a bit to that fight, so there is going to be Trick Room being able to come back in with an Ant Matrix, create space. That way, EMP is going to be close here for Bode as well. There is a potential for Trick Room to slowly rotate these ultimates to be able to win.
Amplification Matrix, since they know they're taking the back position. Infected has to stick with the bot, though. They can't move away from it. Pummy goes down. They're just picking them apart because they can't deviate away from the bot because the overtime will leave. This now falls to the wayside. They crumble because of this distance needing to stick and recover from. Saints are able to shut them down, take this map, and be able to move on into that grand finals position and drop them down to the lower bracket.
That was so smart from Saints at the end there. Like, understanding that, like, we don't want to take a fight in, like, an enclosed area, right? In that kind of long, narrow hallway. We don't want to do any of that. We want to fight them out in the open because we know that they're going to have to make a decision eventually whether to follow the bot or fight us, and that's one that they were always willing to take on their own, and they take that fight without Infected there. You saw Infected kind of just looking everywhere, like, I don't know what to do. Do I need to go to the bot? What should I do in this situation? And they were just overwhelmed completely by that aggressive dive from Saints.
And when you get to that almost like state of discombobulation, you just have to accept it and look to the next fight. But the more often that that's reoccurring, where you're looking to the next fight, you're just losing time. You're losing ultimate economy, you're losing abilities. Everything just starts to, unfortunately, tip the scale into your opponent's favor, and you just have to weather the storm as it is. And again, there were some great attempts by Trick Room to counteract against this. And actually, from what the chat said, this was, I would say, still very, very close as predictions came through.
Yeah, I think 3-1 is definitely kind of what we expected. This could have gone 5 maps. I think there were some really close ones, but this was a lot closer than, again, I think a lot of people were expecting about Trick Room. They're not out of this tournament yet, obviously, and we will see them in Pro-Am, but I think Trick Room played really well, especially that Antarctic Peninsula, even though they get a lot of value being, you know, on their comp in a map that really favors their composition. But a lot of the other maps came down sometimes to just those last couple of fights. It really felt like at the end there on Coliseum, Saints really just kind of like took the initiative and didn't let go as soon as they started getting that momentum, which is something that I am, you know, when I look at Saints and look at their players, that's something that they're very good at, right? Just putting their pedal to the metal and not stopping until they've secured that victory.
And with that said, we will be able to hear a few words from Saints, so don't go anywhere because we'll be talking with one of their players in just a moment.